Good afternoon for whoever in Toronto live in Toronto, and other people. Good morning, good afternoon. I don't know. So today we have an amazing guest with the Green Healing Show. Another beautiful day and another beautiful guest. We are with Dr. Keesha, and she's a doctor of sexology, herbalist, and certified functional medicine, and founder of Academy for Integrative Medicine. Welcome to my show,
Oh, thank
Keisha.
you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right. So tell me about what yourself first. Why did you end up doing what you're doing right now? I know you've been a medical doctor before, and right now you're actually doing the integrative medicine. Why do you do that? What was your inspiration to get you to this field?
So I have never been a medical doctor, just to make that
Oh,
clear. I started
right.
out as a registered nurse, and then I worked in the ICU and very trauma oriented places in the hospital, and did that for a long time. Had four children. This was all through my 20s, and then when I was about 30 years old, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And that was a big shift in my in my whole life. And I always tell people, like, you know, your show is green healing. I would not have known a an herb if it had bitten me. I it was completely Western, conventional American medicine that I practiced, as a nurse. And then when I got sick, I started looking. I had gone to a rheumatologist. She had diagnosed me with RA. She'd given me two prescriptions. One was for methotrexate, another was for a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. And then she said, "When you get worse, come back. Not if, but when." And I thought, well, hang on. I eat really well. I make all my own food. I run. I'm very, very healthy. Is there anything else I can do? And she said, no, this is your genetics, because you told me you had autoimmune disease in your family history. And I had. My grandfather died at my age that I am right now, with rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 56. And he was in a wheelchair for a long time. And so I thought, well, I went home and I started researching on the internet on PubMed, where we keep our medical research. And I found an article on yoga and autoimmune disease. So the next day I went to my very first yoga class. And in the process of that class, the teacher mentioned this word that I'd never heard before, Ayurveda. And I thought,
Yeah, I never heard about this too. Yeah, I've seen it in biology. Yeah, what is it? Biography.
Ayurvedic medicine, the sister science of yoga, from India, 10,000 years old, from the Vedas. And so I thought, oh, he said just enough. Like, Ayurveda says that autoimmune disease is undigested anger. And digestion of emotions and feelings was something I had never, ever thought about. Like, oh, I thought we just digested our food. And so I started thinking about that. Like, do I have anger I haven't digested though? And then I realized I didn't really process anger. I was always sweet. Like, I had anger, but it was coated over with sweetness. And I thought, oh, there must be something to this. And so I started learning how to meditate. I started practicing yoga. And one day in my meditation, I started seeing the word autoimmune, like it was just dancing in front of me. And I thought about the word autoimmune, and I thought, my goodness, that means I'm attacking myself. I'm committing suicide basically in a societally acceptable manner. When is it that I first wanted to die? Which was an interesting question, because at that time I didn't want to die. I had four little kids. I really loved my life. And so as I started going backwards in my memories, I landed on this little 10-year-old girl version of myself who was being sexually abused by the vice principal of the elementary school that I attended. And I thought, oh, she wanted to die. She really did. Like, she didn't understand what was going on. She couldn't get anyone to really listen to her. And so I thought, you know what? I'll bet this disease process that I have today has something to do with this. And it turns out science tells us it does. And as soon as I started really working on the trauma from my past, 6 months later, my RA was gone. So it was very, very fascinating to really start to conceptualize this idea that the mind and the body are so connected. First of all, that was new for me. And
Exactly.
right? Yeah. And then secondly, that to really start taking responsibility for the meanings and the beliefs that I had made up in response to my trauma when I was a child. And it turns out everybody has had trauma. It may not be capital T trauma, with the things that we think about when we hear the word trauma, like physical and domestic violence and emotional, psychological, and spiritual and sexual abuse, neglect and abandonment. Like all of these things would be considered capital T trauma. Like if you had a parent or a caregiver that was addicted to a substance or incarcerated or mentally ill or divorced or dead, like these are all big traumas, right? But then we also have the what I call the little t traumas, and those are the ones that are, well, if we were to fill out a perceived stress scale and we think of ourselves as overwhelmed all the time, actually that's a little t trauma. Any experience that we've had of feeling rejected or betrayed or not good enough or not smart enough, not fast enough, not beautiful enough, whatever it is, right? Then those moments are categorized in the brain as also traumatic. So, and right now we're living in this global trauma. So there's a lot happening around this word trauma that's important to understand, like what causes the toxicity in the physical system as a result of it.
You know, I really relate to what you're saying because I was a PTSD coach that and the reason was I had some PTSD and I didn't know that
Mm,
because yeah, somebody robbed my car, attacked me with the knife point, and that accident actually affected whole my life. And
mm,
from that point, I just realized if I don't process this trauma, it will affect my other aspect of my health as well, right? So I started processing it, and then I had when I processed it, then I had my fertility problem,
mm,
some issue with the fertility, and I then
mm,
realized if you just a little burden of negative emotion, if you, as you said, rejected, or if you have fears, these kind of burdens always kill you. And
they
then
do.
the connection between mind and body is going to be disconnected, and then you get some disease like autoimmune disease that you are not aware of, because a lot of people have it with them and they
Right.
don't know why they have it and where it comes from. And I know people with chronic disease, they have it for 23 years or 23 years, and they have the same medication and they are not feeling well. And I'm asking
Mm-hmm.
myself, why they are doing this medication? Because it's a temporary relief from their pain, and that's why they are taking it. And because if
Right.
they don't take it, they feel pain and they don't know what to do with this. But this functional medicine really help. I mean, I'm seeing right now that it helps a lot of people with chronic disease, especially when you have some um, emotional trauma in childhood.
Yes, it's so important. And I teach for the Institute for Functional Medicine, and I teach doctors how to really understand the impact of trauma on the adrenal glands and the rest of the hormone system, and then how that affects the microbiome and, the immune system. And one of the things I talk about when I'm on stage is, you can't tell your patients to reduce their stress. That doesn't
Exactly.
work, right? Like if somebody might have a special needs child, or they're caregiving an elderly parent, or they have a job that they love, but it's still stressful. You don't say reduce your stress, you change your relationship to your stress. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, instead of thinking of it as stress, like my work, I always tell people I'm one of the busiest people that I know, and yet I don't feel stressed at all by it because I know I'm living my life purpose and I'm in the flow of being an instrument in the hands of God. So it's like there's no perceived stress in there. And so that's really important to bring in is it really doesn't matter how much stress you have. It's how you relate to it and how you interpret it and think about it.
Because why people then something happened, they say, oh, you must have a stress, but the meaning of a stress is not really defined, you know. So
Hmm.
they say, maybe I'm angry, maybe I'm emotionally um, have some negative vision, or so that's why the stress is not really explained to people, because I know when you have fertility issues, you go to doctor and they said, oh, it might be a stress. This is not enough. So what do you do exactly when somebody come to you and have, let's say, some chronic disease? What do you exactly do? Do you start with testing, or do you go to their personal history?
Both, actually. I do both at the same time. And I do something called that I term. I wrote about it in my book, Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle. And I think about each of us as our own unique individual puzzle. No two people are the same. No two fingerprints are the same. We're all very different. And so we have to really understand, like, I do a very thorough history. Like, what how do you tell your story is very important when I'm assessing. And then I also want to know what your body's trying to tell us. And so we do a series of functional medicine tests depending on what's happening for you at the same time. And then that's the way of asking the body to speak up also. And, functional medicine testing differs from conventional medicine because conventional medicine testing is looking for a disease process, and functional medicine testing is looking to see how close you are to a disease process so we can turn you around and go the other direction. And it looks more for that root cause of what's happening underneath it all. But one of the things that, like, then when I'm treating somebody, I don't, I actually don't like what I call green allopathy, where we're just doing supplements, right? I actually think 25% of any solution is going to be through food, 25% will probably be supplements. The 50% is what's going on here. How you're perceiving yourself, your story, your history, your future, like yourself in the context of your life with everybody that you're interrelated with. All of that is a very big factor for your health and wellness.
And it's interesting, in your topic you say that's the most, uh, well, let's say, most toxic.
Reducing the most toxic,
Yes.
yeah, disease causing chemical is what I think of resentment as the most toxic chemical. We think about, like, all of the chemicals that are manufactured by big corporations and dumped into the air and the water and the soil, and they are very harmful and they're killing our planet, and we're doing it, we're destroying ourselves. But at the same time, even more toxic than that is the chemical that we create inside of us, and then we make ourselves bathe in it like little hot tubs inside of resentment, and we get sick from that. And one of the things that, I don't know, there's a Chinese proverb that says, don't forgive, you dig two graves instead of just one. I think Mark Twain was credited with saying, if you don't forgive, then you actually, it's like eating rat poison and expecting the other guy to die. So I think these are all really important sayings that have been said throughout history, because it isn't just me who has noticed that. It's been people from thousands of years ago, that resentment is such a terrible toxic chemical. And if we hold it inside of us, then it's affecting everything from cellular level out. So
Exactly, yes. And I was talking to one of my friends. She's acupuncturist, and she said all of the angers and whatever emotion you have related to one part of your body. Let's say you may have liver issue, you may have some other visceral issues inside. So you have to find out. So if somebody is angry, I don't overreact to what he does. I just try to find the problem with his disease. So all the emotions related to uh, something that you don't feel comfortable inside. Yes.
it's very, very true. And different people, I know Louise Hay did a book a long time ago
Yeah,
before she died around this. There's another book called The Body Speaks, and like different people have mapped where different parts of the body can become affected by emotions. But again, 10,000 years ago, Ayurvedic medicine mapped this really interesting way of thinking about this, in that they said we are more than our physical bodies. We actually have 5 layers to us, the panchakoshas. So we have our physical body, which is always called the anamaya kosha in Sanskrit. And then we have the pranamaya kosha, our energy body. And then those bodies we go emotional, mental, and then we have what they call the anandamaya kosha, which is also called the bliss sheath, or
wow.
God layer. And it's what Carl Jung in Western psychology thought about as the portal to our collective unconscious as humans, and that all wisdom and all knowledge is contained there. And when we are meditating, that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for that place, right? And it's where we get to when we have been meditating for a long time. But we don't have access to that 24/7 if we're toxic in any of the other layers. So, the pranamaya kosha, or the energy body that's right next to our physical structure, is actually connected to our emotions through the chakra system. And, people often will think, yoga practitioners have been taught that there are these 7 chakras, right? Wherever the spinal, afferent, and efferent nervous system bundles cross, there's this big wheel of energy there. But actually, there are many more chakras than just that. In fact, you
Yes.
could think of 72,000 of them wherever the nerves cross, right? In the world of acupuncture, they're very familiar with this.
Yes.
But
Yes.
in the panchakoshas, why this is important is because that nervous system that populates our physical structure actually is out here connecting our emotions and our mind to our bodies. And so, whatever is going on that has toxicity in the mind and emotional layer in our manamaya kosha, that actually will determine how we express our genetics and our immune system, and how balanced our hormones and our adrenals are, and our gut microbiome, and whether or not we can heal our leaky gut or not. Like, all of these things are directly connected through our nervous system. And our nervous system reactivity pathways are set up when we're children, very, very early, in response to the different events that we go through. And so, let's say one day you were in class and there was a spelling bee, and you missed one of the words in front of the whole class and they laughed. Every child will be different about how they react to that. And so, if one child might have thought, oh, well, and sat down, another one might have gone into this huge deal about it, and then made up a meaning that it's not safe to be up in front of people and mess up. And then they would create an adaptive behavior response. This comes from my doctoral work in 2013 called the Healing Unresolved Trauma Study. So what happens is we first have an event, then we have a feeling, whether it's hurt or shame or anger or sadness or fear, panic, and that will be felt in the body somewhere. And then we set up a nervous system response to that feeling. So if it's like for sexual abuse, for me at the age of 10, every time the intercom would go off in the corner of my fifth grade classroom, I would go straight into a panic response. Even though every time the intercom went off, it wasn't because I was getting called to the vice principal's office. It was for the secretary to make announcements or to say the Pledge of Allegiance, but every single time, like Pavlov's dog, I would go straight into the freeze response. Most children go into a freeze response, not fight or flight, because they're not autonomous beings and they don't have any power, so
What
they
is
freeze.
what is this stage again?
What is what?
What is this stage again? Can you explain more?
Stage? What do you mean?
You said not fight and flight, but another stage for children.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is?
So we always think about sympathetic nervous system arousal as fight, flight, freeze, or faint. But children don't fight or flee because we don't have any power. We're not autonomous, right? So usually children freeze. And so that's usually the response children have is to freeze, not to fight, not to
Well,
flee.
I
When
got it.
they're and so for me, that panic got frozen into my body because I would freeze, right? And then the meaning that you make up is the most important part of all of this. So when I'm doing therapy with people, they'll think, do I have to go back and relive all these things? And I always say, no, not at all. What you're really doing is doing what I call tracking your hurt, where you're finding out what was the meaning you made up about that event. And then what's the belief that you carried forward into adulthood about yourself in response to that? And then what's the behavior that your little child mind, because remember our child brains are not fully developed till we're 26 years old. We don't have a prefrontal cortex fully developed till we're 26. And so we have a lot coming from that limbic system, the amygdala, right? All of that alarm and harm system. So when you think about it that way, then you can think like, oh, a lot of my beliefs and my behaviors have been patterned by an upset child who didn't have a fully developed brain yet. So in adulthood, what happens is we have these challenges that will, like maybe a disease process or maybe a divorce or maybe, I don't, whatever big challenging thing that you have, right? And it's an opportunity to start re-looking at some of your meanings, beliefs, and behaviors so that you can heal that little kid that made those decisions. And that's the only way that it'll stick is to really reattach to your own self and your own little inner child part so that they can feel like, oh, they're being supported and held by you. So,
In my book, Naturally Conceived, which I just published, I also have one chapter about childhood trauma and hormone imbalance. That's so interesting how childhood trauma can uh, just create lots of mess in your body.
yes.
And you're not aware of it because a lot of people hide those traumas, and they think that is they just neglect about it. They just ignore it. They don't know that can affect their body, and because
Mm-hmm.
they don't actually process it, that's why they still have hormone imbalance. They still have lots of medication. That's interesting. So we're gonna have like few-second break, and we come back again. Please subscribe to Pantea Kalhor Transition channel and order my book Naturally Conceived through Amazon. Thank you for watching. Keesha, I know you are a founder of functional medicine or integrative Academy of Integrative Medicine. So tell me about integrative medicine, just for my audience, because this term everybody hear about this term, but they don't know exactly, is it about the functional medicine, or you actually combine the acupuncture or other um, herbalist, herbal or other stuff to it.
Yeah, integrative is a different term than functional. And the reason that I use it is because I'm integrating my conventional, nursing background with my board certification in functional medicine and my board certification in Ayurvedic medicine and my training in psychotherapy and energy work and yoga. And then I'm also a certified conscious dying doula. And herbalist. So I pull all of that together and it informs my medical practice. So it's integrative in the way that it brings all of those parts, like all of those bodies, right? The mental, the emotional, the energetic, and the physical together, so that it's treating somebody as a whole system in the context of their history and their story and their environment, not just in isolated systems in the body.
So how people can find this program? I see that's your website, drkeisha.com. Can they
Hmm.
find?
Yeah, so I train people to do what I do as integrative medicine health coaches. And there's a tab on my website on drkeisha.com called certification. And it's a 6-month online program. And we do live case study calls once a week. And it combines the emotional healing with the functional medicine and the Ayurvedic medicine pieces.
Beautiful. So do you have your book with you?
My book with me?
Mm-hmm.
No, not sitting on my desk right now. I don't. Downstairs, I do.
I wish you could talk about it with us.
Yes. So solving the autoimmune puzzle. I'm just going to see. Yeah, I don't have one right next to me. Solving the autoimmune puzzle is the name of the book, and it goes through the freedom framework, which is what I developed to really see everybody as an individual puzzle and treat whatever's going on. And so, the freedom framework is if you have a puzzle and you look at the outside of the box and you just love and you say, oh, I want to put this puzzle together, you take the lid off and you dump all those pieces out. The first thing that you're going to do when you're looking to put together a puzzle is to turn over all of the pieces and look for the corners, the 4 corner pieces, and all the edges, right? So that you have a frame. And so this framework that I use involves these 4 corner pieces that we work with at the same time as each other. So in other words, genetics is one of the corner pieces. Everybody has their own unique genetics. That's why there's never one size fits all. The second corner piece is going to be digestive health. Anybody with autoimmune disease has leaky gut. So we really have to deal with that digestive piece. Who's living in there? How bad is the leaky gut? What is the immune system doing in response to food you're eating? The third corner piece of the puzzle is toxic burden and load. And that's going to be different for each person. So different people will be exposed to molds or Lyme or Epstein-Barr virus, but then also the toxic thoughts in their own heads. So those also are toxins. And then we have our own willingness to rid ourselves of those toxins and our body's ability to detox. That's all going to be unique for each person. And then the fourth corner piece of the puzzle is trauma. And, healing past trauma, also looking at patterns of stress coping in adulthood and how they're related to, again, those meanings and beliefs from childhood and behaviors that were, developed by the wise mind of the child that may not be working for the adult. Then we want to get the edges filled in, and there are 4 edges to this puzzle. The first one is the uncover the root causes, and we look in the body, the mind, the heart, the spirit, and the story. And we kind of discussed that earlier. And then the upper edge is going to be confronting the lab data. And it's not just the functional medicine laboratory testing, but also what your body's trying to tell you. Like, what does your tongue look like? What do your bowel movements look like? What do your nails look like? How's your hair? How's your skin? What's your energy level when you wake up in the morning? What's your libido level? All of these things are very, very important. And then the third edge piece of that puzzle is connecting the dots between your lifestyle choices and that data that your body's trying to give you. And so when we get sick, our bodies have been trying to tell us something's wrong for a really long time, but we're not often trained to really listen to the language of the body when it's very quiet. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's learning how to do that and tune in. And then the last bottom edge piece of the puzzle is to create the life that you really want with intention instead of these default settings from childhood. Like an example of a default setting is, like, told you about my childhood trauma, and then what the behavior that I chose because my vice principal was telling me it was my fault that this was happening, was that I had to be perfect to even survive. And so perfectionism became one of my driving forces, at the age of 10. And drove myself to perfection for 20 years until I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And then when I dove in and I really started to do this work, it only took me 6 months to reverse my RA, and I've never had it again, even though
Beautiful.
it's in my genetics, and I never did have to take meds. So it was just a willingness to really get in there and discover what were the things that my little child brain decided that are not working in current day, and why, why am I trying to kill myself off, from those? And so really starting to shift and heal those.
Wow, wow. You know, the most important experience you have in your life, let's say about the healing, it helps your patient to trust you more. Let's say
Mm,
you had those problems, and because you already tackled those problems, when you talk to your patient, they can believe you. And functional medicine is a very interesting, yeah, medicine. I mean, I'm not saying, yes, it's medicine kind of. And then because it goes through the root cause of all the issues and try to connect everything from, even from your gut, from your emotions, so everything through those layers you talk about. You said, yeah, it's not only physical layer, it's not only spiritual layer, you have 5 layers, right? So
mm-hmm.
that's so interesting to understand that your body as a whole should always perform in order to be healthy. So if there is something missing there, so you have to find that missing piece of puzzle.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
And it's all going to be different for each one of us. So it's
exactly.
really
Because
learning how to individualize that puzzle too.
exactly, I like it because everybody, like my clients, tell me, what is the diet I should take? Well, yes, you can actually tell everybody, yeah, eat some healthy food, blah blah blah. But maybe some diets is not good for some other people. Maybe they
Exactly.
have exactly other underlying issues that they shouldn't even eat those kind of even healthy food
That's why
because
I do genetic testing on 100% of my patients, because genetics actually tell us what are those foods, and not. And I also do food sensitivity testing to see what your immune system is responding against. And the combination of the information from food sensitivity testing and genetic testing really helps to keep, I call it putting the bumpers up on the bowling lane so the ball doesn't go in the gutter, right? We want to make sure that that's not happening.
beautiful. Thank you so much for being with us. We really learned so many things from you, and I wish you best
No, it's my
for
pleasure. Thank you.
thank you so much.